Wow. Okay, we're doing this. As you can tell by the title, today's topic on the horror headquarters is Annabelle, the 2014 movie that I watched in 2020, and only a couple times ever since. And for good reason. Now, if you have yet to watch this film, you're missing out. On what? Sleepless nights and horrific nightmares is what. My name is Hassan Shamoot, and I am so excited that you guys are joining me today on episode 45 of the Horror Headquarters. I know it's been kind of a while since I've released an episode. Hopefully, not too long for you guys, but I am beyond excited for this one. And I'm just going to jump in. And this episode's going to be a little bit different than all the other episodes that I've released, being that Spotify has changed a lot and it's changed how you can incorporate music and trailers and soundtracks and all that kind of stuff. So, this one is going to be a no music episode because a lot of you guys have also been requesting that I release one like this because you feel you would enjoy it a little bit more. So we're going to test it out. And without further ado, let's begin. There's a lot to cover. Now, the way Annabelle opens with her staring at the camera was the moment I realized this was going to be one of those horror films. Just the camera work and sudden noises as the film began left me unsettled. The first sign that a horror film is doing its job, of course. Now, there's so many favorite moments I had in this film, but I have to say, learning that the opening scene is a true story is what made me contemplate continuing in the film. The fact that the doll moved by itself, left messages, and was used as a conduit to get inside one of the nurses, just insane. Yes, I believe in this stuff. Not saying you have to, but if you're listening, I'm assuming you're somewhat intrigued. Now, much of the rest of the film is fabricated for that horror feel, but it doesn't mean it wasn't amazing. I have to say, they did a great job of making it seem like the movie was real. Fun fact about me, I'm absolutely terrified of porcelain dolls. Or any doll for that matter. Because I promise you, once before at an estate sale, when I walked into a room with old porcelain dolls scattered across the floor and bed, and I look at one to the right of me on a windowsill, and its eyes moved. My mom was there when she saw me booking it for the front door, so no, this isn't a fake story. As much as I wish it was, that day still haunts me. So, you have to imagine my discomfort when I realized that Mia, the main protagonist in the film, had a baby room filled with dolls. And to make it worse, her husband surprises her with, you guessed it, Annabelle. Now, I have to say that the directing used in the next scene, the murder scene, was genius. Having it zoom into the window of the house next door, while the shades are being blown by a gentle wind. No music. Chef's kiss. But man, when the sound kicked in, I nearly shit my pants. I had my hands covering my eyes, especially when Mia's husband, John, went next door to check on the neighbors, and took a long time to return. Now, if I hear a scream, I'm with Mia. I'm calling the police to handle it. Ain't no way I'm walking into a house where someone was just heard screaming. But seeing Annabelle Higgins walk slowly in the background while Mia's calling the police and then holding the doll like a baby creeped me the F out. And then her nasty alleged boyfriend emerges from the closet and stabs her. This intense fight scene with all the screams had me glued to the screen. Another cool touch that they incorporated is putting the camera in the perspective of Mia's perspective after she was stabbed. She's kind of like dizzy and kind of dazed with what's going on. And as she's being dragged out by a stretcher, she passes by the room where Annabelle Higgins has killed herself, but she's holding Annabelle in her hand. And when that single drop of blood falls in the eye of the doll, silence, then a build of tension, because you realize the story is about to twist, it's about to turn, something's going to happen, and the legend of Annabelle is born. Something I can't forget to discuss is the old vintage feel of this film. The costuming, the setting, props, dialogue, it all comes together to give the film an even more terrified feeling. I'm able to immerse myself in the story, and I love playing along and following in every step. Now, it's hard to find films these days that are periodically correct, so in my opinion, they absolutely nailed it. I found myself recalling that the film was released in 2014 and not 1994. No joke. Now, I have to say, I became so much more fearful of the plot after Mia gave birth to her baby girl and they moved to an apartment complex. I always got fearful that when the demon would show up on camera next to her, and especially the scene when the little girl appears in the doorway, starts running as the door is shutting, and then jump scare. It's Annabelle Higgins, who then disappears. And throughout this whole movie, this demon is driving Mia insane and it's putting her daughter at risk. And then we're introduced to Evelyn, who I absolutely love her character. And I have to say, the actress who played her, Alfre Woodard, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, I apologize if I'm not, had that gentle and supernatural feel that characters like Evelyn needed. Her involvement in her backstory added a layer of love and mystery to the movie, but it pains me that she blamed herself for her own daughter's death, and, spoiler alert, felt that killing herself to help Mia's daughter would rid her of the guilt she faced. Now, seeing Evelyn's dead body on the sidewalk beside Annabelle after she had jumped reminded me a lot of Michael Myers, because when the police arrived, Annabelle disappears. Now, I can't forget about John's involvement in this whole scenario, because one topic that seems very common amongst horror films is the man always accusing the woman of losing her mind and refusing to believe a word that comes out of her mouth. This example of gaslighting, as I call it, is present in many popular horror cinema. AHS, Murder House, Hill House, Insidious, What Lies Beneath, Rosemary's Baby, The Babadook, Gaslight, need I go on? They all have a central similarity. The woman is labeled as psychotic, delusional, or mentally unstable, or even all of the above. But seeing it in Annabelle with John was definitely upsetting, though it's definitely worse in many of the other options I've listed. I had this preset belief that maybe he would be different, but I was proven wrong. It literally takes him until he himself is confronted with the entity that seeks to kill their daughter and take her soul that he believes in Mia. The way I see it, it's meant to make us more enraged with the plot, and to keep us watching to see if the naysayers will finally wake up to see the threat posed. That's really the goal of movies, to keep us intrigued to await what happens next. Another character that I found really intriguing was Nancy, who, if you guys recall, she is the one that's drawing on the stairs as Mia is coming down and about to leave the apartment. When she drew Leah getting run over by a vehicle and then it coming true, I nearly broke out into tears. It's scary how demons and the supernatural in the film can manipulate others to create foreshadowing like this to amplify the horror aspect. But I have a question. Is it bad that I think Nancy actually possesses a power that makes her draw the events? Because me, I love theories. I'm a theory person. So I always try to make connections. And just the way that her brother was also trying to silence her as she was trying to have a conversation with Mia just got me more intrigued. And then they confront her parents, but sadly, no progress is made. But I will say, this is like a really stretched theory. I think that that little girl is the same little girl that was seen in Mia's apartment. And if you don't know which one I'm referencing to, I'm referencing the little girl that's seen and then starts running towards Mia, and then the door closes and it opens and Annabelle Higgins appears. Now, this could be a very stretched theory, but I've seen actually a lot of other people on social media be discussing this. But my favorite scene in the whole film has to be the elevator scene. The freaking elevator scene when all hell breaks loose. The amount of times the doors closed and opened, the baby carriage, the dim light, and then the damn exit sign in red. Hmm. This scene is a huge reason why I'm terrified of elevators and getting stuck in one, which has happened before. Thankfully, it's only about 15 seconds, but still terrifying. But the execution of the cinematography, directing, and acting, all bottled in a mixture of sound, made me squeeze into a ball, covering my eyes, waiting for something to jump out. Of course, the facade is eventually removed when Mia is racing up the stairs and realizes that she's being attacked and followed by a demon with horns, something that's also present in The Nun 2. when the schoolgirls are chased by one as well. The first person point of view during these types of scenes is unlike any feeling out there. Being I'm screaming and slashing my TV with my fake claws as I'm sitting down. Then, of course, there's the final scenes in the film. Mia, John, and Leia are at peace. No sight of the doll. But then we have the true story of Annabelle's discovery coming in right in the last scene. A woman walks into a store seeking a gift for her daughter, a nurse. She soon spots Annabelle being displayed on a shelf and is in total awe, leading her to end up purchasing the infamous doll. Fun fact about this scene, you can actually spot the Raggedy Ann doll on a shelf behind the woman before she picks up the Annabelle doll. If you don't know already, the Raggedy Ann doll is the actual doll from the Annabelle case. Sorry, for many of you I've just ruined your childhood. But if you're ever in a store and spot Raggedy Ann, don't look it in the eyes. I have to say, for the longest time, I thought the makeup and figure of the doll that was depicted in the three Annabelle films was the actual doll. But I was proven wrong when I dug deeper into the warrants and the cases that they were involved in. And I have to say, finding out that it was a Raggedy Ann doll just makes it even creepier. Now, I unfortunately and fortunately have to address the elephant in the room. The horrible, horrible reviews that were put out after the release of this movie, both on IMDb, which is where people go to rate movies, as well as Rotten Tomatoes, where the critics and specialized movie reviewers go. It shocks me how many people found this movie as a cheap shot to make more money, with many of them saying that it wasn't scary and didn't have the same factors as The Conjuring. And that's where I think they show the flaw, because they're not supposed to compare one movie to another. Now, I will say The Conjuring is by far one of the most terrifying films I've ever seen, being that the presentation of Bathsheba is something I cannot unseen. And this is also something I have discussed in a previous episode. It is also the third episode of this podcast, and it's third for a reason. If you listened to the episode or have listened, you would know why. But in terms of Annabelle, I personally think that this film is the best out of the three in the trilogy that we have. This is not to say that Annabelle Creation and Annabelle Comes Home are not well made films, because they both are, and they were done magnificently. However, seeing the backlash and hate for this film reminds me of the hate that The Nun received, even though that one was catastrophically worse. If you haven't listened to my review on The Nun, it's the first episode of this podcast, and I urge you all to give it a listen, especially if you're not a fan of the movie The Nun. I think it takes a very particular person to know what type of horror works for them and what type of horror doesn't. Like, for example, I don't like alien movies. I'm just not a fan of it. I don't like a lot of extraterrestrial stuff, though there are some exceptions that I will make depending on the film and the director. Because, like I say, directing is a very big part of people that end up enjoying a movie or not. But I will say that whenever I look at reviews of any horror movie that has done horribly, or even a horror movie that's done fairly well, I always see hundreds of people state that they've watched this film with other people. And as I've said in so many previous episodes, if you're watching this movie, or any horror movie for that matter, with people that make you laugh and you find this movie funny, then you've ruined the whole meaning of horror movies. You're supposed to watch it with people that have a hunger for it, that love horror, that enjoy horror. And if you laugh during it, that's not to say it's not a scary movie. Because I can promise you, if I watch a horror movie with my mom, I most definitely am going to laugh because her commentary throughout the film is always so hysterical. And this is also not badgering anyone that watches horror movies with friends and laughs. If you guys enjoy that, that's fine, but don't degrade the movie's quality and horror aspect for that reason. And just as an example, I want to read you guys the critics' consensus from Rotten Tomatoes. And I quote, Annabelle borrows unabashedly from better horror films content to leave viewers with a string of cheap jolts that fail to build on the far more effective The Conjuring. Now, I do understand that all these films, including Annabelle, The Conjuring, The Nun, are all part of a universe. the Conjuring universe. And there are so many spin offs that connect to the Conjuring films and to the cases of Ed and Lorraine Warren. But me personally, if comparing Annabelle to The Conjuring, I don't see anything negative to say, and I absolutely adore both movies. I mean, just going off everything that I've included in this review, in this episode that I've just discussed for all of you, the cinematography, along with the character development and foreshadowing and central themes, all of these make the film so enjoyable because it makes you fall in love with these characters. It makes you feel their innocence. It makes you empathize with them. So you don't want to see anything bad happen. Especially seeing the baby go through so much trauma and difficulty, as well as Mia and having the naysayer be her own husband, is heart wrenching. So, respectfully to everyone that finds this film funny or boring, I urge you to look into it with a perspective of all the different aspects of the film. You have to learn about the history of the film, the period of the film, the director's vision, the energy that the actors are bringing, the setting, the themes, all these different aspects. Every little one makes this film what it is. And having taken film classes, especially on horror, I'm able to appreciate so many different horror films that I never liked in the beginning. Not to say that Annabelle is one of them, but I will say my first time watching The Shining, it wasn't my favorite film of all time. I didn't really understand it. But after taking a horror class and learning about all the different aspects, the setting, the hallways, the quietness, the craze person, all these different emotions that are going through in one house while there's a ginormous storm outside and it's getting stronger and stronger. All those aspects together made me appreciate the film so much more. It made me see the beauty of it, and then also learning all the traumatic things that Shelley Duvall went through behind the scenes, and how rude the director was, and how many different takes they had to do until they were satisfied. Just all of this stuff adds into the horror aspect. So I want you all to try something. Please. I want you to take a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, or even just use your phone and write down the tiny details that make a film stand out. You can either take a film that you enjoy a lot or a film you really didn't enjoy on the first watch, and discuss anything you're unclear about, like the setting, the environment, the dialogue being used, the tone, the character development throughout the film, etc. Just write it all down. Go through the whole film and break it down. And I hope that through this process, you guys will be able to see the beauty of any film, not just horror films, but the beauty of a film. If done properly, it will speak volumes when you look back at the notes you've taken. I have done this with multiple films, including one of my favorites that I have yet to review on this channel, which is Coraline. That movie is an absolute masterpiece. And even before breaking it down, I always wondered why I adored it so much, why I loved the mystery behind it, the horror aspect, the characters that were in it. And one big thing that stood out to me was the setting. There are so many hidden messages in that film that are used periodically that you don't even think about until you're able to pause the film, write it down, and realize, wow, this connects to this. This is foreshadowing this. This is a representation of this. Just being able to do that is so magical. And I personally have enjoyed it. So please try out this tactic and let me know what you guys think by messaging me on any of my socials because I would love to share your guys' story and even see if you guys have tried this before. Alright, now there's a personal story that I have about my first time watching Annabelle, which I sort of teased at the beginning of this episode. May 14th, 2020 was the day that I watched Annabelle for the first time. As soon as I started the film, a bird flew and hit one of the windows surrounding the living room. Now, you can imagine how unsettling that made me. I froze for a couple moments and tried brushing it off as a coincidence, but looking back, I don't think it was. And you guys will find out later why. And I'm going to describe it in this episode, don't worry. I had just finished the film when I began to clean up the popcorn, my area and all that jazz, was just resituating my life, trying to get back to reality when the lights in my room shut off. The nights in the living room where I was watching Annabelle at 2:07 a.m. completely turned off. I let out possibly one of the loudest and most horrific screams of my life, but somehow didn't wake anyone up. And I have to say, in the moment, I can still recall even being surprised by my own scream because I never thought I could be as terrified as I was. Because obviously, after you watch a horror film, you're always unsettled to an extent. But the lights turned back on, and I was like too scared to move. I was like collapsed on the floor, like gripping the couch. And I began by saying a prayer, closed my eyes, and prayed, and then I got up and ran to my room. I could not, for the life of me, sleep that night, and I kept hearing something in my closet. Now, it was probably just my mind, because obviously, like I said, after horror films, there's always an aspect of unsettling feelings and uncertainty and paranoia, which I have experienced before. Not saying that doesn't exist. But we move on now to the next day. And I don't know how to explain it, but I was driving when something told me to turn into a neighborhood. And I always trust my gut instinct. To anyone out there that doesn't trust their gut or their instincts, please do, because I promise you it'll backfire if you don't. So I did it. And I turned into a neighborhood, and the more I drove down this narrow street, the more confused I got. I'm like, ugh, it was probably just a weird feeling. And I was about to make a U turn when I spotted something on the side of the street. I parked, I started walking towards this thing, and then I stopped. It was a bird that was struggling to fly, but I'm unsure why. So I saw a tree branch, I picked it up, and I tried helping the bird get off the road. And during this, I saw a large black spot on its stomach, kind of like it was decomposing or something, or had just been really severely injured. By the way, this was a blue jay, so their stomachs are usually white. This wasn't a robin's. Because, like, if I saw a robin with, like, a black spot, I would be like, maybe that's just how they're made. But when I saw that, I dropped the stick and I tried shooing it away, trying to get it off the road so that it wouldn't get run over because it was still moving. But my attempts proved unsuccessful. So I walked back to my car and I was driving off. And I look out my side window as I'm passing the bird, expecting to see it, but it had disappeared. It was gone. This is a true story, and it makes me think about the bird that hit my window when I was watching Annabelle. Are the two correlated? I find it hard to be a coincidence, but what about you guys? Let me know on my Insta or in the comment section below, which will hopefully be there, what your thoughts are, either on this story or on your thoughts of Annabelle. I have to say, discussing this film is such a delight, though it leaves me with an unsettling feeling in my gut. Hence why I've only watched this film a couple times because I'm always followed by something weird that I want to label as coincidental, but I don't have the feeling to, and it feels wrong to label as coincidental. But regardless, this is such an amazing film, and if you guys have not checked it out, I highly recommend it. And hopefully, there wasn't a lot of spoilers in this film because I promise you, it is filled with horror and it has that horror feel that you guys crave. It is such a staple in the horror community that I think deserves so much more than it received, and it pains me to look at the reviews, still to this day. But I'm still there with my 10-star rating on IMDb, so there you go. But I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and if you have, please share it with someone that loves horror, or share it with someone to scare the heck out of them. Your support means so much to me, and I can't believe the 1 year anniversary of this podcast is nearing. Wherever you are listening, if you could do me the biggest favor and hit that follow/subscribe button and thumbs this episode up if you're listening on YouTube, or even rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please rate us. This tells Spotify and my podcast streaming platform that I'm making great content, and they will actually give me more opportunities for this podcast, such as comments, which I actually have inquired about. And they said as they continue to roll it out, they will give it to more creators. So that means they're not really caring about tiny creators like me. So I'm hoping you guys will help me with this and get that Horror Headquarters merch, which is in the description below, along with my social channels. I love you guys all so much, and I'm so appreciative of you guys listening to this entire episode. If you guys reach all the way to the end, that's insane. I am so excited for what's to come. I really hope you guys enjoyed the layout and style of this episode. If you didn't, please let me know. If you did, also please let me know. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments, and I hope you guys go watch Annabelle tonight if you guys haven't, or if you guys hated it and you guys are going to try that tactic I told you about. But until next time, tread very lightly and pray for forgiveness. Midnight hour is approaching.